Just months after the pandemic, we now have cashdemic as gas prices soar and the economies around the world melt down. What's causing it? Is it Putin? Was it Trump? Or is it corporate marauding that's been concealed for 50 years? Hello there, you 5.7 million awakening wonders. Thank you for joining me on this voyage towards truth, where we start to dismiss the lies and deception, how the mainstream media and centralized government and corporate power come together to cudgel, bludgeon, hypnotize, and distract us from inevitable truths. If you want to join me on this voyage, please ensure that you subscribe to this channel. It's really easy. Just subscribe right now. Turn on the notification bell as well, so you never miss one of our daily videos. And at the end, I'm going to explain to you how and why you should sign up to our mailing list so you can join us for live events like on July 10th with Wim Hof and Vandana Shiva, where we're going to talk about how to create a new world. We're not going to just moan about the problems. We're not just going to moan about corporate power. We're not just going to moan about inept governments and a biased, lying media. We are going to investigate and create new systems with you. You are going to do it, and we are going to help you. That's how it's going to go down. Let's start right away with addressing the phony fake news, fake narratives that are around gas price hikes. Wherever you are in the world, in our country, the UK, I know over there in the United States, all around the world, we're experiencing price hikes. Is it because of geopolitical realities, military action, or is there something more nefarious going on? Before we get into this, I'm going to read a paragraph that, to me, explains perfectly what globalism is. Relationships between separate states and global corporations that amount to a network of relationships that prevent ordinary democratic power ever being enacted. There always existed big and powerful global corporations. The Dutch East India Company dominated European trade in the 1600s and 1700s, for instance. But global corporations' current power position vis-a-vis other actors is unprecedented in terms of sheer size and volume. It starts to become apparent that international relations are anything but a one-sided story of either state or corporate power. Globalisation has changed the rules of the game, empowering corporations but bringing back state power through new transnational state-corporate relations. International relations has become a giant three-dimensional chess game with states and corporations as intertwined actors. We'll explain over the course of this video how that happens. Let's have a look at everyone's favourite president of the United States of America, snoozy old, sleepy old, soporific Joe.
So for all those Republicans in Congress criticizing me today for high gas prices in America.
Now look, as soon as you see the geezer, he's barely awake. He looks like his own waxwork model, doesn't he? I'm running the country.
Are you now saying we were wrong to support Ukraine? Are you saying we were wrong to stand up to Putin? Are you saying that we would rather have lower gas prices in America and Putin's iron fist in Europe?
Now, obviously, I wouldn't advocate for abandoning the people of Ukraine, but I think you'd have to be extremely naive to imagine in 2022 that America put humanitarian crisis ahead of financial realities. Is there anyone watching this right now, any one person who thinks, you know what America is mostly? Is a place that they're like Captain America. They go around the world just helping and that. You know that's not true. It's not true of our country, the United Kingdom, either. So this is not a criticism that's aimed at you, the American people, who I love and respect, and who I've personally found to be some of the most wonderful people on earth. This is a criticism leveraged at the corporate state American entity. Because do you know what I firmly believe? America, like Britain before it, is just a veil that obfuscates corporate interests. And here is the information that shows you that that's essentially true. Of the world's 100 most powerful financial entities, 71 of them are corporations, not countries. Look at where power is starting to concentrate. Now, if you understand that that's how power operates, whose decisions and actions do you think ultimately determine the most important things in the world, i.e., pandemics, outcomes during pandemics, both financial and medical? And who do you think is most responsible for the current price hikes around gas in the United States? The White House has gone out of its way to blame soaring energy prices on the war in Ukraine, calling it Putin's price hike. They've even got a catchphrase. When there's a catchphrase for something, it's normally a blag, isn't it? They came up with that thing, ultra MAGA.
And the ultra MAGA Republicans, the MAGA Republicans are under my predecessor, the great MAGA king.
They're always employing, aren't they, people from media to help them come up with catchy little slogans. We do it in our country as well. Advertising agencies help politicians to get elected because they can't run on truth. They can't run on the fuel of truth. They can't even go, this is our vision for the country. This is what you want, so we're going to deliver it to you. That's what's meant to be going on. Have you forgotten that? Because I sort of have. So Putin's price hike, that's a catchy slogan. Getting those January the 6th hearings produced up by a Hollywood exec. That shows you that they manage and manipulate information and data. Well, here, limited though we may be, we try our best to tell you the truth, and we will continue to try to tell you the truth. Putin's price hike, but the reality is that energy prices were already surging before Russia invaded Ukraine in late February. Oh, right, so it was already happening. That's interesting. As recently as the mid-2000s, energy companies fretted that the US would soon run out of natural gas. Now, due to the US invented technology of hydrofracturing, or fracking, the country produces more gas than it can consume. They've got more than they need. They've got too much. They've got an excess of it. So that's not the problem then. How peculiar. Since 2018, the United States has been the world's largest producer of oil and natural gas. On paper, we are energy independent, John Hess, the CEO of Hess, said. As Russia's invasion of Ukraine pushed US gas prices to more than $4.10 per gallon, setting a new all-time high. So on paper, the US has more than enough natural fossil fuels. Now, of course, there is a strong narrative around climate change and the negative impact of fossil fuels. What interests me, more than any of that, is that America could be self-sufficient, producing your own resources within your country. Forget the efficacy of those models and whether or not you need to move to green, new, renewable energies or any of that. At the moment, you don't need to be doing deals with Saudi Arabia. You don't need to be fretting about Russian activity in Ukraine from an economic perspective, only from a moral one. The largest oil and gas companies made a combined $174 billion in profits in the first 9 months of 2021, with profits set to smash records, reaching $834 billion in 2022. Do you see how the crises of the last couple of years have been used to expedite existing advantageous conditions for both governments and corporations? Can you see that they are able to now increase profits? If we're in the middle of an economic crisis, how can the most powerful corporations in the world generate more revenue? Surely the financial leaders would feel the impact first. Oh shit, there's not enough resources, there's a problem getting oil, we can't do this deal with Saudi Arabia. No, more profit. This while drilling has risen by 60% over the past year. So the idea behind the price hikes is scarcity. We don't have enough, so we have to raise the prices. Well, that's not true. They've increased drilling by 60%, they've increased profits significantly, so that whatever is the truth, it's not scarcity, right? So firstly, accept that principle. Whilst it's the world's largest producer of oil and natural gas, the US is also the third biggest global exporter of oil. So it's exporting a significant amount of the oil that it generates. Prices of gasoline and diesel in the United States are determined by their prices in global markets, since the US trades diesel and gasoline. So one immediate solution, and one that a lot of you will be cynical about, would be the nationalization of the oil and gas industries to cater to Americans first before entering into global trade agreements. Who benefits from global trade? Is it ordinary Americans, or do you imagine it might be these corporations that are challenging nations and have usurped nations as the most powerful entities in the world? So before you argue with an idea that you've been conditioned to believe is like communist or socialist or whatever your conditioning was, because believe me, I've been conditioned too, just know that if you were able to nationalize oil and gas, you would be able to control and establish what the prices are and ensure that ordinary Americans, you, were able to get gas and petrol and the many derived products at a price controlled by you, because you wouldn't have a government that was working for corporations, you'd have a government that was working for you. This is something we should aim for. Not a centralized government, localized government that act in confederacy when dealing with global issues like this, but never limiting the power of ordinary Americans and ordinary communities. Since Congress lifted the ban on oil exports in 2015, all American drilled oil and some of our natural gas have been priced on the international market. Global market forces, not our abundance of domestic fossil fuels, set the price of oil and gasoline in the United States. The federal government does not claim any right to the oil or gas under private land. So the American government has stymied itself by passing regulation and legislation that means that the gas and oil that's under private land is owned by those corporations, and the price is set by global financial markets. So what power does your flag, your government, your nation have? It doesn't have to be like that. You could change it. You could change it so the power of those corporations is not ordinary working business people in little communities that have started a plucky little business selling cutlery. I'm talking about global giants that are bigger than countries, more powerful powerful than countries, so powerful in fact that they have warped your nation's ability to serve you into that kind of butler service for corporate elites. As a result, a cessation of US exports would lower the supply of oil in global markets and raise its price. One would expect global fuel prices, if anything, to increase as a result. What American politics has created is a global market stranglehold. Even if Biden were to prohibit the export of oil at this point, it would of course mean more scarcity, which is a weird thing to say, which would increase the price of oil, which would then be passed on to the consumers. So what's necessary is a kind of extraction from this globalist system that's dominated by corporate elites. So those of you that have actually felt that nationalism, not any kind of ethno-nationalism that's racist or ideological, but nationalism as in the ability to control your own country and your own country's resources might be a way to oppose corporate elites, you were right. According to Open Secrets, the top oil and gas companies spent more than $12.4 million on lobbying in the first quarter of 2022, about $1 million more than they spent by this time last year. In 2021, they spent a total of $119 million. Isn't it sort of amazing that the decisions that are made at the national and international level are advantageous to these interests who are seeing their profits increase during a time where ordinary people's lives are deteriorating and falling apart, and they spend that money influencing the government? It's almost as if the voting that you do as an individual isn't as powerful as the lobbying they do as corporate entities that are more powerful than most of the nations on earth independently, and certainly collectively far more powerful. And even if they're competing or dislocated corporate interests, they still create a system of lobbying, influence, global finance, which places a stranglehold on the ability of governments to regulate their own countries and control their own country's resources and therefore serve the people of that nation. The only way this can change is with a new kind of politics. It's not going to happen by voting for the Republicans or for the Democrats, or in my country, the Labour Party or the Conservative Party, or changing the leader of one of those to a younger one or a better looking one or a different colour one or a different gender one. It's not make any difference. It's the system. You know that now. Let me know in the comments if you agree. Filings show the American Petroleum Institute lobbied for provisions related to US oil and gas exports in a number of bills that were introduced in response to the war, including one which would accelerate US exports of liquid natural gas to EU partners. So they were lobbying for more exports at a time when there is a scarcity of that commodity. I suppose that's going to further inflate and increase the price, and it's certainly not going to be beneficial to ordinary Americans. So it shows you that the lobbying is used to advantage corporate interests over the interests of ordinary citizens. But that's bloody obvious, isn't it? Because without lobbying, the only influence that would be present would be the influence of ordinary people through the ballot box. Then politicians would be forced to address the concerns of ordinary people rather than these ridiculous, phatic, rhetorical displays that we've become accustomed to seeing, some soporific banalities spilled out of the mouth of a geriatric, and we call it government. And how is the power balance between corporate power and state power shaping up today? The world's biggest corporations have increased their wealth compared with nation states, illustrating the growing power of multinational businesses. That's that list I was showing you earlier. Of the top 100 revenue generators, 71 are now corporations. They include Shell, ExxonMobil, Total, and Chevron. So that's why you've got the current gas crisis. That's where the power is. Power is obviously influence. Influence creates conditions. The conditions are not created because of poor people or because ordinary people's wages are too high or whatever the Fed are telling you right now. They're always looking for some way that they can continue to pass on the problems to ordinary people while passing on the solutions to the powerful. The 10 biggest corporations, including Walmart, Apple, and Shell, make more money than most countries in the world combined. Globalisation has brought about a global structure in which state power is not the exclusive governing principle anymore. That's why if what you feel is an anti-globalist impulse, you are right. You are right. So whatever the aesthetic of your particular brand of nationalism, localization, decentralization, collectivized power of ordinary people is part of the solution. I'm not talking about any form of centralized power, technocratic, digital dictatorship, or certainly not old school centrist, Stalinist socialism. I'm talking about new ways where you can create the life that you want to live, in the community you want to live in, free from intervention from either the state or the stymieing influence of powerful corporations who have government power in their shadow. That's why Putin's price hikes is a phony, fake aphorism, a distraction from truth. While the war between Russia and Ukraine is atrocious and horrible and has all sorts of brutal human consequences, it ain't the reason your gas prices are going up. If it is the reason, where's all that profit coming from? Why is the exportation inflation continuing? Why is there a refusal to renationalise these interests? The simple truth is that globalisation is the problem, the relationships between the state and the corporate world is the problem, and the inability of your media to honestly report to you is where we come in and start to change the paradigm. But that's just what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel. It's the only power we have is you. Turn on your notification bell right now so we can communicate to you every day, 7 days a week, a new video on this channel. Sign up to the mailing list right now so we can give you a weekly bulletin telling you about the live events we're doing, like July 10th with Vandana Shiva and Wim Hof. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at one of these. They're great videos also, but more important than any of that, please stay free.